So, hello, my friends, and welcome to What's Up. This is the program every 2 weeks where Gregg, Braden, and I get together and just chat about whatever's on our mind. Always about something that's interesting about the big world and what's going on. So, Gregg, how are you?
Hey, John, it's good to see you. I'm doing well. I've been traveling a lot internationally, and well, it's so interesting to me to see how the rest of the world is viewing the world and the events that are happening right now, or that are happening right now. And I think one of the things that is just so obvious is how the media covers the same events. You can tune into the media anywhere in the world and you'll see the pictures are the same. The narrative and the commentary is so very, very different. And it's interesting to me because a lot of our choices in our conversation, our political choices, where we spend our money, what we agree to, is driven by what we believe to be true in the world. And the way that the narratives are being carefully crafted uh, in different parts of the world to support or to unravel certain policies. It was very apparent to me during my travels. So I think, and as I come home here in the U.S., I'm seeing it. I am absolutely amazed at what I'm seeing on college campuses, high level college campuses, the adamant beliefs and the protests that I'm seeing happen based on narratives that
Yeah.
are either incomplete or absolutely wrong. And then you see the interviews with college students, young people, and when they are confronted with the facts
Yeah.
of what is happening, I'm just going to use what's happening in Israel right now is a perfect example. Many of them are shocked. They're saying, "Why don't we know that?" They change their opinion, and it's very obvious how the information is being directed to form those narratives and those opinions.
Well, I've got an interesting story in that regard. When I was back in the first or the Gulf War in Desert Shield, is what they called it.
Yeah.
I was out there with the commander, the naval forces, the unified commander, on his flagship, and it was a couple of very interesting things happened. Number one, the press was embedded with all of these American military units. And so they were reporting back almost real time on literally what was going on. And at the same time, you may remember the Norman Schwarzkopf, the general who was running that whole thing, had daily press conferences. And it was turned out to be the first war that was run on CNN or run on press conferences because all of the information that anybody got back in Washington and everything was based upon the press conference. Now there's a uh, eh, and so if you missed it, you were in trouble. Now a couple of things came out of that. Number one, in the Navy where I was, the Navy has had a historical up till then a historical precedent that he said, you when you went to sea, you went to sea, and you weren't connected at home at all. And you looked for the mail delivery because that was the highlight of the kind of every 2 weeks or something, maybe you get a letter. And I was sitting on this flagship, and it was becoming clear that things were going on CNN, and nobody except one aircraft carrier in the whole fleet had the capability to take down the information from CNN and be able to present the the real time kind of dialogue and stuff that was going on with the commander of the whole thing. So what the Navy did is that they went out and they went to all of the crew members on this aircraft carrier who had recording devices to be able to record. Back then it was these VHS cassettes. And everybody that had a recording device to do movies or any other thing, they commandeered them. And they would take down they would record the CNN thing, and then they would duplicate it all over the ship by all of the sailors. And then they marshaled every airplane that they could, and they'd fly them off of the carrier and take them to all of the helicopter them off to the destroyers and everything, so that all of the commanders of all of the fleet had some kind of an idea what was going on in the war that they were a part of. Now, that turned into a very interesting thing. When I got back from that, I went back to see the chief of naval operations, who was a friend of mine, and I explained to him what was going on, and he called the 3-star in, who was running all the avionics and the electronics and the warfare kinds of stuff, and it began a whole revolution in the Navy in terms of they put capabilities on, so kids now have email and all of that kind of stuff that they never would have had before. Yeah. The other thing that came out of that was that all of this press stuff was generating reality back in the United States about what war was about. And they were getting all kinds of reaction. In particular, you may remember that there was a time when the armored group, some American armored group, found a whole bunch of Iraqi soldiers who were done dug it in the ground, and they ran out. The tanks had a scoop like a snowplow on the front of the things, and they ran them at high speeds down that thing and drove and pushed dirt into the top and suffocated and killed them all. And they thought that the Americans thought that was really creative in an interesting way. And when that imagery came back to the United States, it drove people crazy, saying, "God, why would you do that?" And then the military sat there and said, "Wait a second, that's the business we're in," And there was this really interesting disconnect. Then the military decided, we're not going to do that one anymore. And so they changed the whole rules about how the press can interface. And so the reason why you don't see anything in terms of Israel and Gaza and Ukraine in particular is because they need to control the narrative. And if they can't control the narrative, they can't keep this war fighting kind of stuff going, because when regular old people figure out what they're doing over there, they go nuts and say, this is, inhumane what you guys do. Well, those of us who have been in that business in the past came to that conclusion a long time ago. And so there is, and then when you look into what supposedly, a third of the budget of the CIA is just to control and pay for their assets that are embedded in all of the major media all over the world. I mean, there is this big control. They have figured this out, that controlling this whole system is very, very important.
Well, I learn something every time I speak with you, John, and I didn't know that you were that close to what was happening at that time in Iraq. I remember that exact incident. There was a blade. It was like a snow shovel blade, like on the front end of the tanks. I remember when that happened. Well, where this was really apparent to me, they were interviewing young people on college campuses about October 7th and what had happened. And the young people were supporting Hamas. And the interview was asking, do you support the following atrocities? And then they would rattle off the atrocities. And what the kids on college campuses saying, they said those things never happened. They didn't happen. The reason they think they didn't happen is because two things. One, our algorithms are social media algorithms say it's against community guidelines to post the images. And the kids are saying, if it happened, how come we haven't seen it? Well, we haven't seen it because the algorithms aren't allowing it, number one. But number two, there's a concerted effort to shift that narrative. And it was very apparent to me how, I mean, I've always known that it was happening, but you don't really know until you travel internationally. And you have to make an effort, a concerted effort to find these news feeds from Asia, from India, from throughout the Middle East and America. And then you look at them and you think, man, this is like, what reality are we even looking at? But then there's even a deeper conversation that comes up from that, John, because the narratives are being driven to support this shift that we're seeing. We call this reset, or whatever people want to call it. The World Economic Forum is calling it the Great Reset. And it's obvious there's a push for war. There is a big push for big war. And it's coming from a lot of different directions. But when I follow where the information leads, John, it's interesting to me because it's coming from the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, two organizations of unelected officials that are now driving the narrative and much of the policy that's influencing our lives and changing the world. We didn't put those people in power. And it makes me think about how do we get to this place? How do we get to this place where a handful of unelected people, not even officials, behind the scenes, and most people on the street wouldn't even know their names. Excuse me, if you mention their names, that are actually making decisions of policy and war and technology that are forever shifting the landscape of the planet. They're destroying entire industries. They're ruining people's lives. They're creating a lot of suffering in the group of people that have the least bandwidth to accommodate that suffering economically and financially. And where does that go? How far do we allow that group of unelected officials to determine the fate of our future and of our nation and of our planet? John, I'm in awe of how much ground you cover every day. I know you read a lot of books. You got your fingers in a lot of pies, a lot of irons, a lot of fires, and
all you have to do is
I just appreciate all of them. So thank you.
You're so kind. All you have to do is not sleep at night. That helps.
Well, I'm still working on that one.
Yeah. Well, we're about run out of time.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks a lot for this. And for those of you who are watching, thank you very much. We really appreciate all the feedback that you give us and the kind words that you have given us about the value that you find for this little interchange that Greg and I can take on. And we'll be back again in another couple of weeks leading into Christmas. I think we're going to take a vacation over Christmas, and because our usual taping day shows up just the day before or after Christmas. So thank you very much. And you can find out more about this at arlingtoninstitute.org. And we hope that you'll look at the other kind of programs that we got. So thanks, Greg.
Thanks so much, John. I look forward to our next.
Nice to connect with you. And be well.
Thank you. Bye.